So you can't see me, but we are here today with the honor once again to speak to General James B. Thayer, Carlton High School, class of 1940. And what we're going to speak about today is some of General Thayer's thoughts and influences that his time as a teenager in Carlton, Oregon, and how it influenced his amazing life of service.
Yes, Mr. Newman.
So with that, sir, thank you for welcoming us again, and our students have some questions. So, gentlemen.
All right, the first question is, what were some of your favorite memories of the Carlton High School?
Well, first, I want to thank you, Principal Newman. I think the principal of our high school, I'm going to diverse here for a minute, was a guy named Elmer F. Goodwin. And every morning, in those days, they had classes called civics. And I'm going to go into a little more detail. Our high school only had 100 students, 25 in each class. There was 300 in the school, 8th grades, all in one building plus a little annex. But what meant more to me than anything else, I'm going to diverge from the question to begin with. Every morning he would give us a real talk on Americanism, what it meant to be an American, how do you become American, and we would get so thoughtful. You know, we sat there and thought, well, I don't know whether this is important or not, but that meant more to us to become an outstanding high school in America. But I want you to know the principal was the key guy, and he was kind of a robust guy, and he just loved to talk, but what he said, the principal was the guy that made it work. Now back to the question. I just want to tell you, Mr.
I don't know if I loved Elmer.
No, but I think the thing is important. You know, I have 3 Hispanic, including Corey, Hispanic young people here. And the best thing that I've been able to do is to get them to feel that they're a part of America. Because they sometimes feel that maybe they aren't. But the freedoms, and they all say they have the freedoms. But the thing is that people around don't acknowledge that we have to teach ourselves to teach them. And I do it, and that made these kids so important. They're really enthusiastic about school, becoming a little bit. The other thing that they're weak on is geography. They come up from Mexico, and you go through it at your school, but they really don't know. Some of them don't even know where Bend is. They don't know where Sun River is. Never been to Crater Lake. You know, they've been in the valley, but they've never been east. I'm kind of boring you, but this is really important. Okay, back to the question. What is the question?
What were some of your favorite memories of the Carlton High School?
Well, as I say, Elmer F. Goodwin every morning, giving us a talk. We had sport teachers, Miss Huckleberry, we had to take Latin at that time. Had to take Latin. She taught English and so on. We had a science teacher, Mr. Baer, who basically went to Albany College and later became Lewis and Clark. And he coached our basketball. We had a pretty good basketball team at a small school. And then we had another lady, very good-looking lady, who taught home economics and so on. But those were the 4 main teachers we had in the high school. And so those are basically, our memories are based on that. Next question.
The next question is, was there a rivalry between Carlton, Yamhill, or anybody else?
Mainly Amity.
Amity?
Amity had the best ball teams. Had some very good-looking girls there. No, I'd meet him skating at the Armory in McMinnville. Jane Jensen. See, what are the other girls' names? No, but Amity was a big one. Carlton Yamhill was a rivalry, but just so friendly. You know, as a matter of fact, I don't know whether you know it, but Steve Dumdye lives in Yamhill, and his wife, Steve Dumdye, his wife taught in Yamhill grade school for a long time. So I have a very close relationship because all my cousins went to Carlton, and then eventually, and all my But anyway, that's so much for that. The Jernsteds and all those
Oh,
people.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Jernsteds, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit. Go ahead. Next question.
How long has it been since you've gone back to Carlton?
I'd say about 2 years, 3 years. We drove out. The place where I reared from the time I was 4 till I went to college, home has been very well kept, beautifully well kept. And I'll talk a little bit more about Carlton in a few minutes. Go ahead.
Just keep going.
Are there any life lessons that you learned specifically from Carlton that just helped you become a better person or prepare you?
I'm going to start out a little bit differently. And because I think we're addressing half the students are from Carlton. But I bet some of them don't realize that Carlton is 1 square mile. I bet not any of those students knew that Carlton's 1 square mile. It was formed by a guy named Winneberg. And down by the Yamhill River, there's a Winneberg Park where they have the wine deal every year down along the river. And across the bridge, about 1.5 miles, there's a big hill called Reservoir Hill, and he built a reservoir for water for Carlton. So that, I just say that is the beginning of Carlton. And when I was there, Carlton, as I say, was 1 square mile. There was a east-west going to the mountains into Lafayette and Amity, to Newburgh, and then there was Yamhill was 3 miles north. Carlton was 7 miles south of McMinnville. That's the location. It was right at a junction. And in Carlton, there were 3 grocery stores: Jarrett's, Anderson's, and Dumdye's. 3 grocery stores. There was a hair cutter there, a livery stable. Now, most of those young people won't know what a livery stable is, but it's a parking lot. They would bring the horses in, say Panther Creek and so on, and park them. They'd pay to park them. And while they were there was a blacksmith shop that saw the horses' feet. There was a harness factory, a guy that made harness for the horses. And that's really when I first was a little boy. And everything was pretty much horses. There was a doctor. There was and the other thing that's kind of interesting, and I think this is pretty honest, but Carlton is really famous because the guy that got Carlton going invented the baseball mask. This is pretty important. And he was quite wealthy, and we had a bank, Carlton State Bank. He had a big building that he built that basically was a hall upstairs where the Oddfellows and Rebecca's would meet, and in the lower level, which later became a beer joint later on. But he was a guy that really got it going. So now we're going to go a little bit further along on what made Carlton. I think that something that helped. In those days, Southern Pacific was really interested in developing the Tualatin Valley, the Yamhill, Forest Grove, McMinnville, and they would get these towns like Carlton to have a Chamber of Commerce. They called it a commercial club, and the Southern Pacific would put all the money together to promote that area. And by the way, the name Carlton came from a guy named Carl, who lived about 2 miles. Is the White Cloud School there still out on Reservoir Hill? But that's where all my kids, my cousins went. But he lived out there, and it was kind of a crossroads. So all the people would come from around the country, and they just visit there. So anyway, when it came to making a town, the Southern Pacific decided to name it Carlton, and they had a beautiful. In fact, it's now a wine tasting room, the old Carlton's Depot.
Yeah, Ken Wright.
First class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so basically it was agriculture mainly. And by the way, it was made up mainly, as I recall, Swedes, Norwegians, Finns, and I'll talk about the Italians a little bit later, and Germans. kind of a great mix. And we basically, and there was 3 churches. There was a First Baptist Church, there was a Christian church, and the other one I think was made up of something like Finns or Swedes or something. And the churches were very powerful, particularly the Baptist Church, which I belonged to and all of our family belonged to. And the church was, I went to church every Sunday morning, but generally not until I got older. We had the Baptist Young People's Union, BYPU. And so those are the things that influenced my early life. I think the other thing that made a big difference was, once again, the teachers. One of our teachers was our scoutmaster, and I became an Eagle Scout. It meant all the thing in the world to me, being an Eagle Scout. And the church had as I say, the Baptist Young People Union, and then we also had later on a YMCA sort of thing. But anyway, those were the things that on the early years that influenced. I was very lonely. I had no brothers or sisters, and my grandparents were farmers, basically from great grandfather came from England, and then he and his wife came on a covered wagon to Oregon. And this might stop here a minute. By the time they got to Oregon, basically most of the good land in the Tualatin Valley and the Willamette Valley had already been taken. But he found 1,000 acres up in Moores Valley. Are you familiar with Moores Valley?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And he got that. And he became quite wealthy. He had a sawmill, and one of his sons lost his arm in the sawmill, as a matter of fact. And so basically the family did quite well. One of them became the big dealer in McMinnville for selling. I remember the first time I saw I think it was a McCormick Deering tractor. I think it was a little bit before John Deere, and how that influenced to some later on. But these were entrepreneurs that had the will to proceed. And now this is far before the wine business. The first one was prunes. Prunes was a big deal. Across the street was the Finnish picolas. Maybe you've heard of the picolas. But anyway, they had a big prune orchard. They had cherries. I picked cherries. And in fact, I worked at a prune dryer at night, drying prunes when I was in high school. But anyway, I'm sure I forgot some things, but just off the top of the head, anything else? Okay, let's get back to the school.
Okay.
Even in grade school, I was pretty lonely. I had no brothers or sisters. But I found that first grade teacher was Miss Heckman Hayes Hadley. Grade 1, 2, and 3, I remember them. Miss Hayes was good looking. I had an uncle that I didn't think much of, and he liked her, and I thought, I hope she doesn't get involved with him. I was very protective of her, and that was my 3rd grade. So anyway, it was a lonely life, and it was kind of interesting that I never. Let me see. I want to be honest about this. I never thought I amounted to much. I kind of plugged along. I remember I still have a copy of a treatise I wrote in the 8th grade, How Much Security is Enough? Because I didn't have parents. I was left at 4. And I'm not sure, I read that now, and the 8th grade teacher was, I can't remember his name, he corrected it. But I'm not sure that I was worried about my security, which I had from my grandparents. And they'd had 5 kids before they raised me. And by the way, on our farm, it was horses. We had Ned and Dick, and we had 7 cows, and we milked them by hand. I milked them by hand. Later on, we got electricity. We had a Hinman milker that did it. And then after I helped them milk the cows the first thing in the morning, I would go to a shed. And early on, I would cut the wood for the fireplace, for the wood stove in the kitchen, and then I would turn the separator, separating the milk from the cream. And then we sold a lot of all the cream. They would pick it up and take it to the Carlton Cream Rose Butter. They were one of the ads in our. We had advertising in there too.
Advertising in there, yeah.
Yeah, we got paid, and in fact I wrapped butter, quarter-pound butter. I worked every place. So anyway, you're getting kind of a picture up through grade school, and then at high school, I think mainly because of that high school newspaper, it gave us a challenge to do something for the whole 100 students. And first 2 years, I was a reporter and probably went and sold advertising, which basically, when I went to the University of Oregon, I was a advertising manager for the Oregon Emerald. The newspaper. I had the experience of working there. And when we went to my junior year, for some reason, we got invited to Eugene, to the School of Journalism, for the Oregon High School press conference. And I took my staff with me. I took my #1 gal, who I thought was fantastic, and my cousin married her. I think it was the biggest mistake she ever married him. It was Steve Dumdye's father. He was a real wild one. Unfortunately, she died of cancer early. And then I took my artist for the paper, and I also took the guy that wrote the sports. And we went to Eugene. I remember we went on the bus. We went to McMinnville and caught the bus to Corvallis and 99 West. And we went there and to the conference, and all the high schools, Benson, Franklin, Jefferson, Lincoln, LeGrand, Baker, Salem, Eugene, everything, all the high school editors were there. And whatever happened, I can't tell you, but I was elected the president. I couldn't believe it. Here from a little teeny town of Carlton, and a school with 100. And the only thing that I remember I really liked was my secretary was a good looker from Lincoln High School. It's Audra Haffenden. She was a great swimmer for the Multnomah Athletic Club. And what did she do? But she invited me to the junior prom at Lincoln High School. Ooh. And so I had the opportunity to go there, and then I had a vice president, a little girl, and I got well known. And then came along the great victory of the high school newspaper being selected as the best mimeograph paper in America. So all at once, and the other thing, at that time, for some reason, I was elected both president of the both junior and senior class in high school. And I gotta be, I know you won't believe me, but I really had no confidence. I really couldn't believe and basically the church and Boy Scouts and everything, it gave me a slimmer of hope for my future. And then I had the good opportunity, being a Baptist, that the president, at Linfield College, they gave me a 4-year scholarship, mainly because I was a Baptist and Linfield was a Baptist school. And I got to tell you, I went down there, and I went into the president's office to be interviewed, and this very charming, large, about the size of you, came in, just a delightful person. He was a general as president of Linfield College. He'd been a chaplain in World War I.
Oh, wow.
He was so very gracious, kind, gave me all the confidence. I didn't take the scholarship because Oregon had given me one in journalism. But those type of things, and I'd played tennis at Linfield High School. I was a doubles champion for Carlton in tennis. I was never good in basketball. I was second string or anything lower, but I was on the team. And we played Amity for the championship, and they beat us. In our league. at that small league.
Who was in the league then?
Willamina, Sheridan, Dundee was even in it, and Yamhill-Carlton, Lafayette. Lafayette had a little place that the ceiling was low. So anyway, I give you a quick overview. There's other things that could creep in. Is this what you want, I think, to tell?
You're doing great. I just really, quite honestly, we come with these questions, but I find we get the most of it when you just tell us what's on your mind. I always get something different.
Well, in Carlton we had a creamery. It's called Carlton Cream Rose Butter. I think the outfit in McMinnville, Dairy Gold or somebody bought it. And there was a big elevator. I helped some there. It was heavy work. And then also, I don't think the people out in that have the big pork. I better drop that one. But it's a really famous that does a lot of beef and pork producing.
Yeah, Carlton Farms.
Yeah, I don't think, as I recall, we used to take the back road from Carlton to Yamhill, to McMinnville. Boy Scouts, you had to take 7-mile hikes, and we would go down and come back the same day to meet the qualifications. Any questions?
Yeah. So the actual high school, the actual Carlton High School. We were kind of thinking about. Do you remember any idea at what point the two high schools were merged? We were trying to think of that.
Well, I'll tell you the reason.
Please.
Because of my uncle. My uncle was a farmer. He lived out west of Carlton, and he was successful because of his father had the sawmill and 1,000 acres, and he was very frugal. Basically, I think that, and I don't think I'm wrong about this, but I think most of the community were pretty Republican. They were Republican, very conservative, and they didn't like Roosevelt very much. See, I was reared during the Depression, and Roosevelt beat Hoover in '28 and became President of the United States. And I remember my grandfather none of them were very enthusiastic because they always had a lot of freedom, and under the Roosevelt administration they had to get a recovery, which was very successful. And I remember we had to put a little deal in our window, NRA, National Recovery Act. Oh, that's the other thing I think is going to be kind of interesting to you. We raised chickens, and we would put 12 dozen together, and we would take it to the grocery store, and they'd credit it, whip it out, credit, and when we buy groceries, they'd subtract it. There was no cash register at that time. By the way, a haircut was 35 cents. And I remember because Dugan's was across the street from the so anyway, everything was, okay, I got to get to the next step. I've been kind of neglecting. As I say, it was mainly farming, prunes. And after prunes ran out, it was filberts, hazelnuts. And now,
Still big.
yeah, and now we've gone to the grapes. And so that was a routine. Prunes, took them out. And so we, at that time also, Carlton was quite a logging town, the Coast Range of Mountains. And I think that one thing that the students might be interested in is we had a railroad, Carlton Coast Railroad, that ran from Carlton. It was supposed to go to Tillamook, just like in Yamhill, they had the coach that went, a stagecoach from Yamhill to Tillamook. And so it was never built, but they,
Oh yeah. Sorry, there's literally like right next to my house is where they were gonna build the railroad. There's still railroad track pieces.
Well, let me finish that story. And so anyway, they built this big logging camp up in the mountains, and it was very successful. Now, before my time, basically one of the things that was a big demand was for barrels. It was, staves. And the Carlton Manufacturing Company built a huge sawmill in Carlton. Oh, that's the other thing. They dammed up the lake, right where the bridge is going west of Carlton.
And there was the big log lake that used to be there.
That's where they would. And anyway, and the railroad, the Carlton Coast Railroad, would run from Carlton clear up into the mountains and pick up the logs. And they had huge camps. And as I recall, most of the loggers, and I may be unfair about that, I think they were Italians, but they were maybe from Greece, but they were loggers, and they'd go up and stay all week. On Sunday night, they would all assemble, and they'd have crummies that would pick them up and take them up for the week. Then they'd come back down on Friday night. And we even had a hospital in Carlton to take care of the injured, because safety doesn't seem to be wasn't important at all. Safety wasn't. A lot of deaths, it's just terrible. And anyway, Joe Flora had this logging company, and I think it was very successful. Most of the logs were old growth fir, and they would cut them 40-foot lengths, load them on a car, bring them down to Carlton to the lake, dump them in the lake, and then they would recut them into 20-foot lengths, reload them, and the Southern Pacific would take them to Oswego or Portland to sawmills. And so that was big until about 1940, the fire, Tillamook fire, and that kind of shut things down, and that's when I left. But that was big. The logging was big, and I remember, on Sunday night we'd go to church and then on the way back we would see these loggers, these old Italians and so on. They'd been in Portland all week, and they were all drunk. And some of them would miss the crummy. they would run to try to get on the damn thing. And I remember as a kid, we'd say, "Oh, I look at those poor souls." Anyway, are these things interesting to you?
Oh, very,
Very, yes.
And so anyway, it's just, and that's, okay, a little bit step further on the railroad. After the railroad decided that they weren't going to be able to do it, that same road became a kind of a highway, and they would use logging trucks. I remember Ford had a logging truck, and all these guys they'd buy these trucks, and they'd bring the logs down, and a lot of them were terrible drivers. They didn't have license and so on, and it was not very good. The other good thing, and it still exists, I'm reminiscing, but there was an outfit called Carlton Nursery, and they did nursery stock, and the Tarleton Valley now, around Forest Grove, nursery stock is really big, and that firm did very well in Carlton. The creamery did good, the big elevator did very good, and the bank, Carlton State Bank, I remember all those things very distinctly because I was learning.
So in Carlton, that kind of the landmark is the Carlton grain silo.
Well, it's very important. The other thing is, I haven't brought up something that's important, is the swimming pool in Carlton. Now, the Ladd estate, very wealthy people from Portland, had the big bank. And for some reason, these wealthy people, and you could come out from Portland on the train, Portland to Carlton, and they would build these lovely estates. Now, there's one that you might think of just south of Carlton. It was called the Beebe Estate, and it actually was the Ladd. And Ladd has a fountain in Carlton, in the park.
Yeah, I know.
And basically, they dedicated that to them, and he died there down at his estate, beautiful estate, and it's still there. And the other thing is, just south of there, a great star of Gone with the Wind basically had a big home south there. I remember he came to the drugstore, good drugstore at Carlton, Spence Drugstore, and his son went to Oregon State, but he became a pharmacist.
There we go.
And I remember I saw him come into the drugstore and we bought a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
But he was Gone with the Wind, big movie at that time. And so we had a lot of interesting people, wealthy people. Okay, so much for that. Let's get on the other side of town. Up on the ridge, and I think you know probably where it is, but it's a beautiful piece of property that basically, let's see, what was it, WB Air, but anyway, they raise choice livestock, shorthorn, Hampshire sheep, and a guy named Brown would go to England and bring these prize-winning cattle from England, cattle, beef cattle, and also sheep and so on, and all over America he would show them, in Chicago at the International Stock Show, or in Denver and so on. And so we got very well known, and these people were very wealthy too. And there's a big home up on the ridge south of Carlton, about, I'd say 3 miles south, and it's over on the right. And in fact, who owns it now, I think, is that big, it's California Teachers Association. They own all that property in there. And so we had a great diversity, as you can tell, of the people that surrounded Carlton were pretty wealthy.
So I was curious about, was the grain silo there when you were there? It's kind of the landmark building in Carlton. Is that
Just south of the depot.
Well, I know it's south of the depot. It must be because it was a huge grain elevator.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really
it's
huge.
really
It's huge, and Byron Madsen owned it, and he was a neighbor of my grandparents. Wonderful people.
Yeah, because they're converting it. Aren't they converting it to a tasting room? Isn't that what they're doing?
That's what I
Oh, yeah, well, they got tasting rooms. They have it even in the creamery.
I know, it's all
In
tasting
the
rooms
creamery. They have it over there where the bank is.
now.
You know, and they have it where the grocery store was. There's nothing but, it's just changed the thing. And one of my sons has a vineyard, Peach Mountain Vineyard. There's a picture right there in front of my son and the Peach Mountain Vineyard. Yeah, very successful vineyard. See, how much time are we taking? Are we taking too much time?
No, we're not taking too much time. Although we did have something we wanted to present you.
Okay, well, we've been 30 minutes. Is that about right?
Greg, I have one question.
Oh, yeah, Mark,
I'd like
please,
to ask,
please.
If you don't mind, sir. 3 things that you said resonated with me. You said that as a boy, you lacked confidence, and that God put us all here to serve. Those were 2 things that you said. Ironically, it was a chaplain from World War II, the president of Linfield, who gave you your confidence.
Well, that was the first time I'd ever met I don't think I'd ever met a soldier.
Was that
Let alone,
World War One.
That was a World War
World War I chaplain.
but I think I was shocked.
So my question, sir, is how important is it for young people, especially from Carlton, to serve in order to help find their own confidence?
Well, first, it's positive, but I got to think a little bit. I think that I think you have to be prepared when this happens to jump in and do it. Because situations that I got in, and you're going to get the material, I never believed I'd get that close to being killed. As I look back at it now, at first I couldn't believe that the regimental commander asked me to take the task. And I thought, well, he must think I'm pretty damn good, or he wouldn't give me this kind of a death trap. And we did get in a trap, but I got bailed out. But the thing is, I had all the time. I remember when it appeared that I was going to be killed, I thought, well, maybe this is it. Click. God came to the rescue. When they found this hand grenade around this SS Major, and I didn't know there was 800 troops around us, 800 of his troops that were going to kill us. I didn't know there was 800. And when that thing exploded, he says, I'm going to kill all 16 of you. At that time, I said, I'm going to burn your town down. I needed time. I needed time. And basically, the battalion came up and bailed me out. But I didn't know we captured 800. I didn't know the day that just before that we killed 31 SSers in that ambush. I didn't know those things. But when things happen, and I might say I trained my soldiers, they reacted immediately. That's the whole answer. When you teach all your people, if you can get them into the mode, we can do it. You know, the Nike model, we can do it. And I just can't, my whole life has been that way. And you're going to read it in this articles that I never, you know, being on all those boards and having buildings named after me beyond the wildest expectation. But I really realized it was not me, it was God prepared me that I could graciously and, you know, kind of take it casually, sort of. Okay, we're going to get one more. Give me this thing. And we have, I think that this gave us the confidence of winning that award. And the thing is, I can't give it to you because of the fact that, see, I can't use this hand very good. But the thing was so beautifully executed, you see, was just in between. You know, it was a classic. And I think the thing that here they did us to see the scores we got by Columbia University and Northwestern University. What more could you ask for 17, 18-year-olds? You know, great, you know, it's just absolutely, you know, it's just phenomenal what we did. And I remember I had those girls, it was mainly, we had some guys, but we would work at night to do this. And we used an A.B. Dick mimeograph and editorials. And you see, we have little things there. Mm-hmm. And this is real quality.
Yeah, it sure is.
And I can't.
I want to spend some time reading it.
Well, the thing is, no, I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I understand.
Yeah, but and the artwork, you see, basically, let's get this. I can't, this finger damned, and won't work for her. Now, let's open that up. Memorial Day.
Look at that.
Mother's Day. For Mother's Day. Look at this.
Beautiful.
Look at this, is for Mother's Day. In our, see, everything was so thoughtful.
Yeah.
I shouldn't take all this time to show you, but I think this type of thing, if you can install, like a senior like you, what you've done with electronics, and then we'll go back here. And you get, see, keep going here towards it. But look, here's the ads. But you see, we did a lot of thinking from Carlton.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, what I'd like to do is take pictures of the pages.
Well, let's do it.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, work it out. Corey, we'll open this up. You hold it.
Okay.
And he'll take pictures. Okay, Corey?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Corey's my left and right arm.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do is I'm as you know, as a high school principal, I'm always expected to give this inspirational graduation speech.
Yeah.
Mr. McKinney joined me last year in that endeavor, and I'm always looking for good ideas for my graduation speech, and I think I'm going to find some inspiration through that.
Well, the thing is, it can be done. Who would have thought a school of 100 could do this?
Yeah.
But I'm proud of it, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate this opportunity, because it's going to be recorded, and I'll be able to tell my grandchildren, because they don't know where I don't even know they know where Carlton is, and how I visited my home, which basically is better looking now than it was when I lived there. It's really interesting, and there's a damn vineyard right across the street. I'm taking time from you.
No, you're fine. Okay. So, sir, what we have here is I don't know if you recognize that guy.
Now that looks exactly like me when I went to Eugene.
That is the picture. That is the picture. So when you were sharing that story, I was able to share with us this picture here.
I don't know where in the hell you get that.
We're sneaky.
Well, listen, I don't like Steve. Go ahead.
All right, so sir, what we have here is you are the first inductee into the Yamhill-Carlton Wall of Distinction.
I'm thrilled.
You are the first, and it reads, Brigadier General James B. Thayer, Carlton High School, class of 1940, YC Wall of Distinction, presented for meritorious service to our country and our community. Sir, thank you very much.
Greg, hold that up for a minute so we can do this documentary-wise. All right, 1, 2, and 3. I'll doctor that up.
You see what a green pea I was. Is a good picture there of a real nothing. Thank you so much.
That is for you, sir.
Well, we're going to have it up right where it is to show my sons.
And so what we're going to do is, as I mentioned, we're going to be showing this video to the entire Yamhill-Carlton school, all the students.
Yes.
They're gonna.
What do you got, about 400 now?
About 300.
That's right.
So-
See, that was basically with the grade school and high school, that's all we had was 300. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we're going to show this video, this right here. So before we leave you, are there any last words you'd like to share with the students of Yamhill-Carlton High School?
Well, I think are we on?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to say that as a result of you visiting with me today, you see there is an opportunity for all of us. I know I realize that some feel that, what is the future for me? How am I going to make it? But I want the students to know that the result of going to Yamhill-Carlton High School, you're going to get an inspiration from those teachers that may just hit the spot for each and every one of you. And you might not like it too much at first, but it'll push you to do it. And I think that what I've said is the reason I am where I am today. They gave me that opportunity to push myself to the next level. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity to having gone. I never thought I'd be honored by Carlton Yamhill, and I guess I was quite enthusiastic about it because I didn't. Let me tell you, not that I wanted to be honored, but I always wanted to tell the story that I've just told you, and I've never done it before until right this minute. And because of you coming to me and wanting to go to the Air Force Academy, it's really fabulous.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Now, there is something I want you to take on the counter, what's underneath there, but I want you to take